Pride is like turbulence. You don't always see it coming, but it will shake you until you learn humility. Weeks passed since Captain Reynolds was reassigned. He was no longer commanding luxury flights with his polished voice echoing through the cockpit. Instead, he found himself at the FAA Youth Aviation Program, surrounded by teenagers eager to learn what he once thought belonged only to men like him. And right at the center of them was Marcus, the boy he once dismissed as suspicious, the boy he tried to remove from an airport with police. Now that same boy was his student. Reynolds hated every second of it. He wore his uniform like armor, holding on to fragments of dignity. But the truth was clear. He wasn't here to command. He was here to serve. At first, he kept his lessons mechanical. He barked instructions, clung to authority, and reminded everyone he was still a captain. But the more he taught, the more something unexpected happened. Marcus excelled. The boy absorbed every word, every maneuver, every lesson like a sponge. His questions were sharp, precise, and sometimes even caught Reynolds off guard. More than once, Marcus politely corrected mistakes Reynolds overlooked, and the other cadets noticed. Where Reynolds inspired fear, Marcus inspired respect. The young trainees looked at him not as a peer, but as a leader. One evening, Reynolds sat alone in the empty simulator bay, staring at the console. He clenched his fists, replaying the scene of Marcus being applauded by his classmates. For the first time in his career, Reynolds felt something foreign. Not pride, not anger, but intimidation. The student was rising higher than the teacher. The real test came sooner than anyone expected. The FAA scheduled a high-profile inspection, a showcase where cadets would perform in front of senior aviation leaders, including Administrator Carter himself. And fate had a cruel sense of humor. Captain Reynolds was tasked with presenting Marcus as his mentee. The boy he once tried to humiliate would now stand beside him as his crowning achievement. The night before the showcase, Reynolds couldn't sleep. He paced his apartment, haunted by a question he had never asked himself before. What if Marcus is better than me? The day of the inspection arrived. The hangar buzzed with energy as cadets lined up in crisp uniforms, families in the stands, and cameras ready to capture the moment. Senior FAA officials sat in the front row, eyes sharp with judgment. And at the center of it all stood Marcus, calm, focused, ready. The showcase began with routine drills. One by one, cadets handled takeoff simulations, mid-air maneuvers, and emergency landings. They performed well, but everyone knew who they were waiting for: Marcus. When his turn came, Reynolds stood beside him at the console, trying to mask his unease. The simulator roared to life, screens glowing like a real cockpit. Marcus adjusted his headset, checked the gauges, and nodded. "Ready, Captain," he said softly. Reynolds gave a stiff nod, his voice dry. "Proceed." At first, the flight went smoothly. Marcus guided the simulator through takeoff, banking with precision. The audience murmured with approval. Carter leaned forward, watching intently. But then, something went wrong. A sudden system malfunction triggered. Alarms blared, controls jammed, and the simulator spun into chaos. Gasps filled the room. The cadets froze, unsure of what to do. Even Reynolds staggered back, momentarily panicked. But not Marcus. With calm authority far beyond his years, Marcus took charge. "Check fuel. Adjust rudder. Switch to manual override. Now!" The cadets jumped into action under his command. One adjusted the throttle, another recalibrated the altimeter. Marcus's hands moved with flawless precision as he steadied the simulation. Within minutes, the chaos ended. The simulator leveled, the landing gear deployed, and with a soft jolt, the aircraft touched down safely on the virtual runway. The hangar erupted in applause. Spectators rose to their feet, cheering. Cadets clapped. Even the stern FAA board broke into smiles, and at the center of it all stood Marcus, sweat on his brow, breathing heavily, but victorious. Reynolds stood frozen. The boy he once thought didn't belong in an airport had just commanded a crisis better than most seasoned pilots. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed. One bold journalist thrust a microphone toward Reynolds. "Captain Reynolds, what do you think of your student's performance?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned to him. For a moment, pride clawed at his throat. He could claim credit. Say Marcus only succeeded because of his guidance. Twist the narrative back in his favor. But then, his eyes met Marcus's. There was no arrogance in the boy's gaze. No gloating. Just humility. And a quiet strength Reynolds himself had never mastered. And something inside the captain broke. His voice trembled as he spoke. "I came here thinking I was the teacher, but it turns out I'm the one learning from him." Gasps filled the room. Cameras snapped like thunder. Carter leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable, as though deciding whether Reynolds's words were genuine or just another performance to save his skin. The applause continued for Marcus, echoing through the hangar. But over it all, the narrator's voice returned, low and steady. "Sometimes the skies humble even the proudest pilots. But has Captain Reynolds truly changed? Or is this confession just another mask to protect his pride?"